Hello everybody, and thank you again for tuning in today. I'm Kelly Jenny, I'm your host, and you're watching kellyjenny.com. Today I have with me a very long-time friend, a very honored friend of mine, and I'm so happy to have her here. This is Erin Brennan. She is a longtime member of the community, and she is working in the field of sports psychology. So I will let Erin introduce herself and tell you a little bit about what that means.
Right, well, thank you so much for having me, Kelly. I'm super excited to be able to talk a little bit about what I do and how the field of sports psychology has taken off in sports, and just a little bit about how it's becoming more popular and what it means and what is it. Because for some of you, this may be the first time you heard it. For others, you've often heard the phrase sports are 90% physical, 10% mental, or the other way around, sorry, my bad, 90% mental, 10% physical. So there's a lot of thought that goes into that statement, and there's been a emergence of the research since the 1970s, so the field has really taken off, and I've just been kind of getting involved in it, and it's been 3 years now. I finished my master's in 2015, and I'm really excited to be working in this environment and be part of a really dynamic field.
Excellent. So what kind of training, I guess, do you have to do to go into sports psychology? I know I've interviewed other people on the show who have done things like sex therapy, do children's therapy and forensic psychology. What exactly is the specific training that you need to do sports psychology? Okay,
well, the field of sports psychology I like to think is a nice little combination of sport and psychology. So the training required, you do want to have obviously post-secondary education. Across Canada and North America it does differ a little bit, but in the field the certification usually requires a master's degree of some capacity, and then furthermore a PhD. And then certification depending on where you live and what you're interested in doing and what kind of work you are doing with athletes.
Okay, so I know you did your undergrad in at U of A, correct?
Yeah, in the Faculty of Arts, actually.
Right, you were doing English studies.
Yeah,
right?
I started out in the Faculty of Arts thinking that I perhaps was going to go into another field. I was very interested in a legal environment, and I was always very passionate about people having a voice and how to help people have a voice. And a couple things didn't work out, which to my dismay at the time maybe didn't go the way I wanted, but led me to this area of sport, which I've been passionate about all my life. It's funny, in grade 9, I don't know if you remember, but we did that test where it's helping you find your potential career. And they asked you a bunch of questions. Did yours actually
tell you were going to be a psychologist?
It did, and you know what, I should have listened to it because it would have been right, and it would saved me a lot of money. But my number 1 was in the field of sports and athletics, and number 2 was counseling. So it's kind of like the best way to think about putting what I'm interested in together. My undergrad prepared me with an appreciation for people's voice and stories and narrative, and learning about people and what makes people do things and how they think and different ways they think and how they're influenced by their environment. So it was a very solid foundation to the psychological aspects of sport, which adds that layer of another path I'm interested in. I did compete as a competitive curler as a youth very early on, and played a multitude of sports. So I've always been very interested in that field, and then you put psychology into it and it just became fascinating to me. Right. So I did start off with an undergrad at U of A, and then I did my master's in the Faculty of Physical Education. I was given a unique opportunity to do more of an applied project for my Master's of Arts, which allowed me to look at youth in sports. And what I looked at was implementing a mental training program for youth level athletes. Okay. So I was able to actually take the knowledge that I learned in the classroom. I took a variety of courses ranging from coaching knowledges to applied and theoretical sports psychology to qualitative research to counseling classes and ethics as well. I was able to have that exposure, and then to be able to implement the mental training and learn a lot about that. And while I was doing it, I found out that it was the field that I was meant to be in.
Right, how perfect. Yeah. So for all of you in grade 9, if those tests still exist, make sure that you do them, because who knows?
They may be right.
You could land your dream job a lot sooner and not go through the turmoil that I think both of us kind of went through.
Yes, we did. It took a while, but on the right direction.
We got there now. You mentioned ethics, which got me thinking, what kind of ethical dilemmas do you run into in sports psychology?
Well, ethics is a very big field, as you know, and I really enjoy my class in it. I should preface it first. So the course I took was actually in the Faculty of Educational Psychology, and learning about ethics as a field of its own and how it regulates a field of study, specifically psychology, and then adding the layer of sport to it. So ethical dilemmas involving confidentiality is a big one, and that's one that you deal with a lot because the confidentiality piece in our area of work is very important.
People probably want to know all the time, who are you training, who are you seeing, especially I would guess around this time maybe we've got the Oilers in the playoffs for the first time, so I imagine people are probably asking you all kinds of questions.
I get
about
that asked
right?
a lot, and some athletes and organizations I work with and teams are public. There is public knowledge that I work with them. I'm listed as a team member, and others choose to have that remain confidential, which of course we respect and keep very dear to our hearts, upholding what that means for our profession, because it's not only valuable and instrumental to what we do, but builds trust that way as well.
Excellent.
Yeah. So mainly confidentiality, I think, is a big one, and just learning how to critically think in ethical dilemmas was one thing I took away from that class, and having to understand how your decision making works, asking very tough questions, and being able to be in those situations and have tools and resources to have conversations about ethics, to utilize the resources that you're given or that you have access to make those decisions, and then to get help when you need it. In your role, whatever that may be, whatever you are facing at the time.
Just knowing that you're not alone, right?
Knowing that you're not alone, and knowing that there's people going through the exact same thing, and the mentors that are available to help you through it. I can honestly say I've utilized my mentors about what they've done and what they've experienced in the past. And I think when you create a support group that way, and a professional group environment, you're going to continue learning, and I think that's essential to any personal and professional development in any field.
That's good to hear that there's people out there and that you're having a positive experience with that.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So I know the term sports psychology is such a broad term.
Like you might have heard called mental training. Oh, we got a puppy in the picture here. We're gonna adapt to the environment,
right? Our little superstar.
Yeah.
Just continue.
Hey, she wants to be involved. That's okay. Everyone has a voice,
right?
So you may have heard it as mental training. It's also known as that.
Okay.
So
and
psychological training, psychological skills training is a very common usage in the research. So you'll see the acronym PST in peer-reviewed articles. Sports psychology, yeah. Perfect. So that's kind of the umbrella term is sports psychology, I'd like to think.
All right, but if you hear those other terms, it covers all, everything in between, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to sum it up.
I think people would be very interested in knowing, because I don't even know actually, what a day in your life looks like.
Well, that's exciting now. I think every day is obviously different for me. Most days I have a plan going in, and I know what I'm doing. I work with a variety of sports and a variety of levels of athletes. So I work with individual athletes, coaches and teams alike, and organizations and parents. So depending what's asked of me and what my role is in that environment, it's going to dictate where I am, who I'm working with, and what I'm doing in that environment. So I work with swimmers, so that means early mornings at the pool. So Saturday mornings,
why don't swimmers like swimming at night?
That's when they get pool time, so you go make use of it. So Saturday mornings, if they're competing or if they have access to pool time, I work with them in that capacity early in the morning. Usually do some sort of debriefing after with a coach. How did it go? What did we learn? What are their goals? What are they working on? And then I have a bit of a break and off to usually another client meeting, where I might be doing a session for a team, which I've prepared for usually before. Sometimes I have to think on the fly if I get asked to change up and speak about a different subject, but that's being able to adapt when necessary. So that definitely can be a challenge sometimes, but you learn to run with it in the field. And then depending in the evening, usually there's athletes that are competing in some environment. So whether I'm at the hockey rink, an arena, the gym with volleyball, basketball, or dance even. I've worked with gymnasts as well. So I could be at a competition. So I'm there for their pre-competition, usually throughout the competition, and a post-competition debrief.
So you're the whole package.
I'm there.
Start to end, hey?
And I think that's essentially being able to see it all. Right. You need to be there for it.
How do you know if someone's improving if you're not seeing it, right?
Well, you want to pay attention to those little details. And I think every element of the performance is essential, right? So you can't just put emphasis on one or the other. When I get to be part of it and see it, I get to be a little bit more assertive in how I approach things if I have a better understanding of the holistic approach to what happened instead of just one-sided, if that makes sense.
That does make sense.
Yeah.
You said that you work with swimmers in the morning, so I just want to kind of pick apart that piece.
Yeah, sure.
What would that look like? So are you in the pool with them?
Well, I've actually been in the pool once teaching self-awareness and mindfulness. Kinesthetic awareness exercises. So I haven't in the pool once. Usually I'm on the deck, or depending, like if I'm in a classroom or in the gym, I'm with the athletes. I'm talking to them. I'm working with the coach. With swimmers, they may go do a set. They have talked to me about their goals, what they're working on. Are they using cue words to trigger certain levels of focus depending on what's going on in their technical training? If they're working on race routines, that's going to be a very different discussion. So it kind of depends on what the purpose of training was for that day. Sometimes I'll have discussed with a coach what that might look like if we're working on certain things, or if the athlete has something they specifically want to work on, then I get to work on confidence or evaluation of goals, using cue words and relaxation exercises, for example.
So if an athlete comes to you and says, I have the goal, we'll just stick with swimming. So I have the goal, I want to drop 6 seconds off my time.
Sure.
What kind of programs would you be implementing with them? Would you be using things like mindfulness, things like motivation? What would you be doing?
Okay, that's great. So you were a swimmer, so let's go back to your past a little bit. So give me
very good swimmer.
Give me an age and a level of competition that you would like.
Let's say competitive swimming. 14 years old.
14 years old. Okay, so most of my work is paired with the long-term athlete development model suggested by Sport Canada, and of course is based on the individual demands of sport and the individual demands of the athlete and what the athlete is facing in the environment specifically. So once I get to know the athlete and what they're working with, what their goals are, then I get to make a little bit of a program in terms of what I would like to see them do and based on what they want help with. So if they do want to, like you said, work on that 6 seconds, well, there's a few different ways to approach that. Of course, for me, collaboration is essential. So if I am working with a coach in that environment, we got to talk about how to do that. So I can only comment on the mental perspective because I'm not trained in the technical or tactical physical aspect of the sport of swimming. Right. So I would talk a little bit about what their goals are. So we'd start there. And if the athlete wants to take 6 seconds off, how are we going to do that? So 6 seconds, that's a lot. Okay, so what do we need to work on? So let's set some process-oriented goals. So instead of just thinking about the outcome goal of the 6 seconds, what do we need to do to take off that 6 seconds? So do I need to utilize race routines? Am I using cue words? What kind of cues am I using for the technical aspects? Am I working on breath count? Am I working on breathing the way I need to be prior to a race? How is my underwaters? What kind of turns? What am I focusing going in on a turn and coming out on a turn? And then, how am I doing? Where's my evaluation piece, right? So that's just one aspect of it. That's just off the top of my head.
And even in that one little aspect, there were so many little minute details, right?
Right, and that's just one athlete. So if I was working with a team in that environment, we may look at communication for a relay, also team building, role identification, building group cohesion, communication in general.
Team building is huge. I know. I remember from when I used to play on lots of sports teams. People always just thought, oh, you are part of a team, you are already that cohesive model that works together, and that's just not true. You have all these different people coming from all different backgrounds, and they all come together for this one
goal or purpose, right?
Right, and so that's one part of who all these people are. But they're all individual people who bring everything else with them, and I think that people overlook that a lot.
Well, and they have their own experiences, right? And then they have their own individual goals within that big goal. And whether it be the work environment, sport environment, home environment, when you're part of that bigger unit, there's lots of different perspective and experiences that are coming to play. Right. So it's really cool when you get to see working on understanding roles. So if they play a team sport, what is your role as a setter? Are you communicating, for the ball? Are you in charge of the tactics from the offensive and defensive side of things. What are you responsible for? Right. And then how do you communicate it in the best way possible? Is it objective and tactical information? You know, do you like to be communicated in a certain way compared to me? So if I'm playing with you, do I need to let you know that I don't really like to be yelled at? I like to be talked to very straightforward, with maybe a little bit gentler, right? So that's all team dynamics knowledge that I get to work with and build and develop and teach people how to appreciate the differences and how do you develop and build strong and effective teams.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I know quite a few years ago there was a lot of research done on visualization. Do you still utilize visualization a lot of your work?
Absolutely, yeah. It's probably instrumental in about 90% of the programs I use.
Okay, and now that the whole mindfulness movement has kind of come in and taken over, do you combine visualization and mindfulness, or do you treat them as separate? What is that?
I think I would say I combine them. So being, first of all, teaching self-awareness and being very present focused. So whatever sport you're competing in, whether you're in a training or competition environment, just being aware of where you are and how you're feeling today, and do that mental and physical scan to start off. Where am I? How am I feeling? And being able to capture that in a training log or in a journal is something. The reflexivity piece is something I encourage my athletes to do. I request that they complete a journal, not for me, mainly for them. And they get to be able to track what they've learned, who they are, developed, grown, that kind of thing, and get to see the progress. You know, there's a lot of research on confidence, and one of the primary sources of confidence is preparation. So when an individual gets to look back at their journal and see where they've come from and how they've developed and grown in the work they've put in, they're going into these events or environments confident when they're able to see that. So I utilize that. So the mindfulness piece is really important at the very beginning. Where am I? Who am I? How do I see myself in the present? And how do I feel? And then you go further, and where do I want to be? Right, so that's really goal setting, and then visualization, bringing in that piece of I want to see myself successful. So what does that look like? So you can visualize that, and then tailor it so it becomes even more precisely and specifically looked at through, you know, the physical environment, emotion, timing, and you can add all these layers of perspective that they can actually visualize with their different senses while they're training. And bring that into the environment. So the mindfulness piece and visualization go really nicely hand in hand, and especially for kinesthetic learners or visual learners, that's something that's really taken off. Yeah, and injury rehabilitation, big one.
Yeah. I think that whole visualization mindfulness piece, it gets overlooked a lot, and I know maybe I'm hoping not so much anymore now that it's kind of become one of those hot topic words, but I know even when I was doing competitive sports, we would always think, oh, this is so silly, like, why do we have to do this? And, you know, we're peak athletes and we're performing so well and we're in really good shape. But like you said in the beginning, the 90-10% thing, people overlook that 90% is that, just doing that, right? You can be as fit as you need to be and work out in the gym every day and be a good athlete, but if you're not mentally there, it's not going to happen for you.
And especially at the elite level when they're trying to replicate consistent performances, right?
Right.
That's even more essential, is that mental piece.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sports rehabilitation. You mentioned that. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, injury. So as many athletes experience in their training, injury is very common. So visualization is often used as part of that rehabilitation technique.
What would that look like?
Well, I think eventually, from the very beginning, dealing with an injury in the first place, what is the injury, and what is my role in helping this athlete with the injury? So sometimes it's just being a listening ear right off the bat, and then helping them get back to where they want to be. So what do they need to do in that injury rehabilitation phase up here? So not the physical, that's not my area of specialty, so I stay far away from that, but I do talk to a lot of people in the integrated support team in some of the environments I work with, whether it be a physiotherapist or an athletic trainer, obviously the coach, if that information is accessible, and I work with them closely on where the athlete is, if that is exchanged, and then I can work with the athlete and talk a little bit about what their goals are, what are the realistic timelines and expectations.
So just like sports psychology is a big umbrella term that has a lot of little pieces in it, you also work with a really diverse group of people, I guess. So you work with young children, right?
Yeah, so the youngest athlete I work with is 7 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you work with older adults as well?
Yeah, older adults. I think the oldest athlete I worked with is between the ages of 34, 39, that age bracket. So not just age, but obviously gender and adapted physical sports as well. So I've worked in that field. Okay. And grassroots, developmental level athletes to elite level athletes. So athletes who are just learning about their sport and learning skills in their sport.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah, yes, it's the best, yeah.
What does that look like? Like, what would your role be?
My role would be basically facilitating fun.
Yeah.
That's like the best way to explain it. So I mentioned earlier the long-term athlete development model by Sport Canada gives each sport kind of a suggestion guide as to, for a certain age, what should they be learning in that sport. Yeah. And at a very early age, it's creating passion for a sport, reminding them about the enjoyment of it, teaching them simple tricks they can use, not only just to have fun, but to deal with what's going on around them, how do they focus, little process-oriented goals, reaching little successes and victories when they do great things, whether it be very small things or very big things. Yeah,
that's so cool.
It's the best. Yeah.
What age group is that the age group you like working with?
Well, I like working with youth in any capacity. Yeah. It's kind of my bread and butter. I've always loved working with the youth population, and I think for me, when you get to see an athlete learn something, and that little light bulb goes off, that is so rewarding. Like that's just like, so I can imagine how teachers feel all the time, and to me that's kind of my calling, is when I get to help someone achieve what they would like to do. At the end of the day, I think my professional kind of motivation is I kind of want to just help everyone find out how to be the best version of themselves. So if I can help you do that, no matter what age you are, to me that's a gift. And when you see that light bulb go off, whether it be, being able to kick the ball in a certain way at age 7 or 8, to landing a very tough jump in figure skating, or reach, elite level goals of being able to replicate performance on a consistent basis, that's pretty special.
That's beautiful, Erin.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm so happy that you get to do that every day.
Every day,
right?
Every day. Yeah, it sure doesn't feel like work when you love what you do, and when you get to be in these environments that you're passionate about. I think other people feel it, and they know that you love what you do, and people want to be around people. Like that positive energy is infectious, right? And
if people can't feel your positive energy, then I don't know. Then they're not feeling anything, to be honest, because you really exude it. So that's
I think when you have good people around you and good support systems, kids and youth and elite level athletes alike, they have the support then to reach their goals in whatever way they want to head with sport. And we're just there to provide resources and the ability to do ability and capabilities to do so.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
You said you work with elite level athletes as well. Do you want to maybe tell everyone what exactly that means?
Yeah, so elite level athletes are obviously competing at a level of pretty high competition in their chosen specific sport. And the work that I do with them is obviously a little bit different depending on if I'm working with them on an individual basis or in a team environment. So the programming I do would obviously be very different than I perhaps would put together for a recreational athlete.
Okay.
The different types of programming would include more performance profiling, goal setting, motivation, confidence, utilizing goal setting to kind of work through what they're doing and where they want to head, and coping skills, routines, communication, and just building really positive life skills that translate into different environments.
What would you say would be some of the unique challenges, I guess, that you would see with that population?
Okay.
They're under a lot more stress than other people.
So definitely time. I think time is a big one. Is they have so many demands on them in their training environment and their competition environment, and they have so many different types of training that they need to give their time to. So being able for them to balance that busy lifestyle and the demands. So if they're a student athlete, they're balancing being in a student athlete environment. So not only are they competing as an elite level athlete, they are in school. Or on the elite side of things, their training and their competition environments are fueled by more rigorousness and I guess a little bit more perception of pressure in terms of what they want to do and the time that they give in that sport. So just managing that, you know, too, and just being able to deal with the expectations of success and what that looks like for them, depending on what sport they play. And I think too, when you're working in a team environment, you're working with those expectations of other people, whether it be the organization or the other teammates and coaches alike.
Do you find that athletes who have external pressures such as school or things like scholarships or sponsorships even, does that add additional stress to them?
I mean, it can. I can't answer that on a generic basis. It's obviously very individual. But yeah, I think time management is something we all can work on. And you see student athletes do a very good job of balancing their schedules because they have to. So they have a minimum course load and they have to be able to maintain a certain GPA in order to compete. So you do see that that definitely being a challenge, but they become pretty good at it with the right tools and resources. But absolutely.
I imagine if you're on a team as well, then that adds to it too, because if you do something in the public that loses sponsorship, for example, or if you're a student and you don't get your GPA where it's supposed to be, then not only are you letting yourself down, but you're letting your team down as well, and that
you're not playing,
that just compounds it, right?
Yeah. So definitely that's a challenge, a environmental demand that they face, and they learn to cope with at that age and that level. Sorry. Yeah.
Perfect. Do you, so we've talked about the different levels of athletes that you work with, the different age groups. Do you work one-on-one with coaches ever? Or
yeah,
with
I have, and with parents too. Kind of depending, I guess the word client for me is a little bit different than yours because my range is a variety. So the client technically could be an organization if I'm working with the organization, and with a multitude of teams, for example, from age 10 up throughout the whole sport and developmental process. But yes, I have worked with parents, giving them tools and resources to help work with their child. Coaches, oh man, do I learn a lot from coaches. They're I have been blessed to work with brilliant coaches that have let me be a sponge and learn so much and pick their brain and ask questions. And I think it's challenged me to critically think about what I do and seeing things from a different perspective and maybe how they see it, or getting me to think about how I might play a more supporting role to the athlete or to the coach alike, depending on what they're working through.
What's the best thing that you've learned from a coach?
The best thing.
Or the most useful, or however you want to name it.
The most useful, I think, would keeping things in perspective. It's very simple, but I have this one mentor who's just phenomenal at her job. And it's more than a job, it's a career, it's a passion for her. And she inspires people by what she brings every day. She demands excellence, she works hard, and I see her do that every day, and that motivates me to do what I can in my role to support athletes in the same vein. So keeping things into perspective, but bringing that passion every day to what I do, I think would be what I've learned from her. But, from the usefulness perspective is just understanding that things change, it's dynamic.
Go with the flow.
And you have to be able to adapt and think critically. And the work ethic piece is tied into that. And I've always valued work ethic as essential to success. So it's no different than when I'm working with athletes. Understanding the importance of that, and then bringing that to the table in my own work.
Perfect. In regards to parents, I know there's been a lot of stuff in the media recently. I guess there's been stuff in the media throughout the years, but more so in the last...
Yeah, it's really blowing up.
Yeah.
Social media, right?
You
what it means to be a good sporting parent, or what's a good one versus a bad one, and lots of memes about parents in sports. So absolutely.
Do you see that kind of thing in your work?
Yeah.
And do you have a role in that at all?
A role would be parent education, and I think that's really important. I was fortunate enough to take a class with a leading researcher in the field of parents in sport, and she's published some really great work on parental pressures, how they deal with things, how to cope, and they're now with social media just blooming. There's so much more out there, and if you choose to look for it, you can find it. Twitter's great. It has tons of little easy access resources. Facebook, and I mean, never undermining the value of peer-reviewed research. It's there. It's just a matter of going to the library or finding the article online about the information, and it'll direct you. But there's hands-on, really accessible material that you can find, and I'm happy to provide that if there's any information that's wanted. And yeah, I do work with parents, and I feel it's essential for them to provide that support and that positive environment for the growth and development of their individual child in that sport.
That makes sense.
Unfortunately, I've worked with really great parents. So
yeah,
I've been very lucky that way to have athletes whose parents have been on board and been fortunate enough to do so.
That's great. When everyone's on board, I'm sure it makes the whole process that much easier, right?
Yes.
So it makes it a very positive experience, not only for yourself, but for the athlete, which really that's kind of what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. I know we talked about the rewarding aspects to your job, and I think that the majority of your job is rewarding. What are some of the general challenges that you find?
General challenges is, first of all, what do I do? Being able to answer that question and explain it in a way that people understand. Yeah. So happy to be able to speak with you about it today and get the word out there a little bit more. So that's always a big one for me right off the bat. Number 2 is time. Being able to do what I want to do and provide the information in a certain amount of time. The constraints of training sometimes make what I do accessible or inaccessible depending on what I'm available for, or what the athletes have time for in their training schedule, depending of course on their age, their sport, what they're involved in, and what capacity they would like to compete. So time for me, and being able to give 110% of myself. So being able to be prepared for that athlete, to provide them the information, and to be able to follow up in a way that not only is meaningful but effective. So I'm doing my job full circle, and to have those meaningful debriefs and evaluation of what I'm doing. And then that reflection piece I think is important. In your field, I know talked a little bit about ethics and in psychology, and the importance of reflexivity is so big. So what am I doing? How did it make me feel? Did I learn from it? And sometimes one of the challenges for me is just taking the time to honor that for myself. Yeah. Am I doing a good job? Is there something I could have done better? How might have one of my colleagues approached it? And then perhaps even follow up with a fellow colleague or someone who's coming at it from a different perspective, to have those meaningful conversations and say, how might have I thought differently about this in a critical way, and maybe implemented it or learned from it. So that to me is a big one that I find challenging. And just wanting to be there more, and being able to be involved in whatever capacity I can. Right. I would love to be around my athletes a lot more than I get to be, but unfortunately you have to make sure the quality of time you spent with them is of quality, and that they're getting 100% of you, not 90, not 80. You want to be on point for them when they need you.
Absolutely, and I think I know you well enough that I have no problem stating that you absolutely are someone who makes sure that you take care of that with, I'm sure, all of your athletes.
Yeah, and I think you're going to find challenges in any profession. It's, how you deal with them. It's how you get the help when you need advice and mentorship, and that's something that, I'm part of a peer support group that works in the field of sports psychology to have those dialogues with. I have fabulous mentor coaches and fabulous supervisor who I've been very lucky to have that's provided that information as well.
Excellent. Yeah. Have you found, I'm just thinking, and I really don't know the answer to this, so I'm excited to ask it. I know just from watching sports, and maybe I'm biased because of the sports that I watch, but in my house we're typically watching football or hockey. Those are predominantly male-driven sports. I don't see female coaches on any football teams. I don't see female coaches on hockey teams. I don't see females ever. So I'm just wondering, do you see a big gender diversity, or is it predominantly a male-driven occupation? And how does that affect where you fit into everything?
Well, I think the coach education piece is really important because the development of coach education has changed. And as a result, there's more individuals participating, male and female. Of course, some sports are male-dominated, and yes, that's just the way it is. There's more men that are in those roles. But I have been so privileged to be part of teams where there's been very strong female coaches. Yeah. So that's definitely growing, and the population is increasing with the awareness and accessibility to do so for women in sport. And as young girls are competing in sport at different levels too, we're seeing that grow. So that's even more exciting to be part of that. Now in my role, because I'm still new in the field, I haven't really had the opportunity to perhaps come up with a solid evaluation of that in my capacity to do so. It would be very limited. So I can't really say yes or no to that. But perhaps just saying that in my role, I've been nothing but, I've been provided every opportunity to do so. And I've been treated with so much respect and have been embraced by all the cultures, and I'm just working hard to make sports psych piece accessible.
That is wonderful to hear, because you don't hear stories like that all the time when you're working in professions that are predominantly either or gender oriented, right? If it was the other way around, you wouldn't hear that about the male's experience. So I'm really happy to hear that is the experience you're having. And
I hope so, right?
Predominantly the experience that other people out there are having, right?
And I think too, if you're open, I know with counseling, one thing they always say is you have to be the right fit. And in order to build the rapport and the trust, it needs to be the right fit. And I'm totally okay if I'm not the right fit for that athlete. I'm going to make sure I find someone else that is, and give you the resources to do so that they have someone that they feel comfortable with, and there's trust there, and there's someone who maybe thinks in a way that they align with. And I think being able to do that is key.
That's part of the ethics piece you talked about too, right? That's excellent. One of the big things that we talk about a lot on my show, and that I really wanted to address with you, is stigma. So I know in conversations that we've had, you've talked about normalizing the sport and normalizing what you do. I'm just wondering, because I know in the work that I do and the work that other psychologists do in different specialties, like we have sex therapists, we have couples therapists, we have forensic therapists, we have child and adolescent behavior specialists, we have all these different specialties.
The veins within the psychological field.
And there's a lot of stigma around those, because people see individuals who need to go and see a psychologist as being sick. Or being ill.
Weak, or there's that negative connotation, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So if I think about what you're doing, and I think about an athlete who's built up to be strong and powerful, do you find that there's stigma attached to sports psychology in that field, in that regard?
Yes, there still is a stigma out there. Some athletes perhaps don't want to work with the information or what I do as a result of that, and that's perfectly fine. I respect that. But it's become so popular lately with the essential to success piece as part of training that it's becoming the norm. I mean, there still is the stigma that sometimes people don't want, them to know that they're seeing someone to get a little bit of help, or that there's a problem with it. Whereas now that it's becoming an imperative piece of training. So just like your technical and your tactical and your physical training is the pillars of performance, mental is looked at as just as valuable.
Right.
So that piece is becoming so normalized that it's being taught in sports specialty schools now, and the dialogue with it is a lot more open. So I think when the accessibility piece is there and people know more about it, and that there's ways that it's going to be meant to help you with your performance, and it's not looked at as a bad thing as much as it is something that's going to help you, whether it be essential to your success, just like physical training, and it's looked at in the same vein. It's not looked at as a bad thing as much as this is what everyone's doing to be successful.
And I would see it, and maybe this is my own bias because I am in this profession, but I would see it as, if I have a sports psychologist on my team, that just makes me that much better. Like, I'm that much better of an athlete, and I'm that much more important because I have this eclectic team working with me, right?
Yeah, so the sports psychology consultant, we do call them that because I'm not trained in the same way you are trained. So I can't call myself a psychologist, but we're often members of what's called an integrated support team. So coaches, athletic therapists, you are starting to see these teams now have a mental trainer or someone specializing in sports psychology as part of that team, that support team to give training to the athletes. So that's way more common across the board. You're seeing that in all professional levels. I remember even a couple years ago in the playoffs when the Boston Red Sox were in the World Series, I remember hearing that the pitching team had specifically a mental trainer working with them, and I was just like, oh, that's fabulous, right? So when everybody's talking about it, it's, wow, I wonder what they're using it for. Or, oh, how could we use it? And right away there's a conversation. And when there's a conversation, that means knowledge is being shared. It's being transmitted. And then what happens is people want to know about it. And then how does it work? And then it gets applied. And then it gets shared. And then it gets passed on again. And you learn from that.
That's exactly what we talk about on the show a lot, is starting the conversation and letting it go from there. another piece, the normalization piece.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit. What do you mean by saying that you want to normalize things?
So I should be very careful how I use the word normalize, because I know in psychology it's a very fueled word. So let's put that caveat out there. So normalize meaning just as much as making it part of the norm of training.
Yeah.
You know, on a basic premise. So just like you would your physical training, you're spending just as much time on your mental training.
So do you find that is starting in schools then?
Well, it's starting from it's starting from an organizational. Sports teams are bringing people in to help with that. There is some schools that are utilizing sports psychology, especially sports specialization schools. So I've had the privilege of teaching at one and guest speaking and actually exposing students to a little bit of what I do, and talking about some of the issues in sports psychology and sharing with them and teaching them some of the topics that we've talked about today. You know, communication, what it means to be a good team member, concepts of work ethic and commitment, resiliency, goal setting, motivation. How do you focus? The difference between broad focus and narrow focus. Yeah. How do we cope with pressure? How do I identify my emotions? And are they good ones? Are they bad ones? Do they affect my performance? And how do I utilize that information?
Do you find it's pretty well accepted in the schools and with kids and teachers?
Yeah, like they're learning about it, right? Like you talked about that mindfulness piece, and they're bringing mindfulness into schools right now. So some of the topics really cross over. And a lot of what I do actually is very transferable in so many environments. So when you think about getting someone to be the best version of themselves, building confidence, well, confidence works in a home environment, it works in a job environment. You prepare prior to an interview if you go have a job interview. You know, you use routines. So some of the things I talk about transfer very, very nicely. And it's nothing outside of the realm of something I haven't heard of or that's really out there or different. It's just letting people know what it is.
Yeah, I think that's a big piece. It's not a very well-known branch, I guess.
Yeah, and it's just starting to, and it's taking off, and with the social media aspect of it, I know I mentioned that before, but it's there. Yeah. And it's visual, and it's tangible now.
Really helps. What do you wish, I guess, the community knew that they don't know so far? So we've talked about the stigma piece, the normalization piece. Is there anything that you want to just kind of break down any barriers are, or let them know right now and address it? Yeah,
so just I think is being able to talk about it for number one, ask questions. I'm super happy to talk about it in any capacity when I do meet with athletes, and whether it be their families or parents, coaches, that kind of thing. I always just explain what I do, and how I explain it is these are some of the issues that I get to talk about every day, and just have a conversation and see if this is something they're interested in, and if they think it may be helpful to them. And if it is, it's something I'm willing to work with them on. You know, you often hear the phrase, it's not like I can just wave a magic wand and make it better. That's not it. But I definitely believe in the collaboration of working with my athletes and with my clients in order to achieve whatever goal they have set out for them, whether it's to take that 6 seconds off their time, whether it's to just build confidence in how they approach one of their training environments or competition, or to set some pretty big goals to be an Olympian. I have one athlete right now, he's 11 years old, and he wants to be an Olympian, and I truly believe from the bottom of my soul that he will become an Olympian. He is that driven, and it's he knows what he's meant to do, and I'm going to help him in the healthiest and most respectful way possible, and give him the tools and resources to help him with that. So, you know, I think too, letting the community know just what's out there, and being able to take those courses in university and talk about them, and letting people know that this has become, you know, the norm, quote unquote, and it's part of training, and it's playing a big role in the success of athletes.
That's so special. Well, good luck to that person.
Thank you. I hope so.
And where do you see, I guess, yourself going in the future professionally, as well as the profession itself, since it is something that it's not new, but it's definitely getting more motivation.
So let's talk about the profession first. So obviously I hope it grows, and it's on that route
it's got
taking
the
off. It's got the momentum, and people are learning about it, and there's more universities that are opening up research in that area and facilitating the opportunity to do so. And then furthermore, for myself, I think I'm grappling with the idea right now of a PhD versus becoming a registered psychologist, kind of where you are with that route, in terms of what direction I want to head and specialize in, so I can work a little bit more, not necessarily intimately, but specialized within a within a particular environment. I would love to be at a Canadian Sport Institute or at a university one day, but my true passion lies within the applied field. Okay. So being able to translate that information into environments and share that knowledge, and then be able to take it and do something with it. I appreciate that. So I would love to see my work continue to be in that vein, and work with athletes, teams, whether it be individual or on a group basis, and continue the work that I do. And if I can do this for the rest of my life, every day, I'll be happy.
I don't see there being a problem with that. So I know you talked about accessibility, and I know for myself, I don't think I would even know, how do I access someone in this sports psychology field? How do I find a consultant like you? So maybe if you wouldn't mind just sharing your contact information so people can get a hold of you or can talk to you about where they can go next, what steps to take.
Perfect. So you can reach me by phone at 780-999-9010. I do love to share what I do, and I appreciate the ability to actually talk to my potential clients first. And I'm also available by email in the same capacity at ebrennan, that's BRENNAN @ualberta.ca. So that's personally how to contact me. I think when you're looking for information, obviously internet, universities, the resources that are given by Sport Canada are huge. That's a great website to check out, as well as the Canadian Sports Psychology Association. That would be a good start too, because you can start to see what's available in Canada, and what you're interested in learning, or if there's someone you want to connect with in terms of perhaps what specialties they're utilizing. And also I have a pretty respectful resource group available with people I work with, and I'm happy to provide their information if that's something you're interested in and learning about as well.
So I will for sure put Erin's information up on the website as well, so that you can get a hold of her. Erin and myself are going to collaborate one of these days and come up with a project, so a Team Blonde. You can look out for us. We will be coming to a neighborhood near you.
Yeah, I think the ambition piece is one thing you and I have in common, and we've been very fortunate to have supportive environments where education has been essential to what we want to do.
Absolutely.
And where we've come from, growing up in a small town, both moving to the city. We've worked hard to get to where we are with this school piece, and I think that work ethic piece is what gets me every time, is that it's essential to our success.
Absolutely.
And if we keep doing that, good things happen, and other people get to share in those good things in what we do.
Exactly.
So I think we're pretty lucky that way.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here, Erin. It was an absolute pleasure.
And thank you for having me.
We can have you on the show again in the future.
Sounds good.
So I'll put Erin's information up on the website, and thank you everybody for tuning in again today. You're watching kellyjenny.com. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And my handle is @KellyJennyPsych. So that is how you can get a hold of me. You can also email me if you have any questions for myself, or if you'd like me to pass anything on to Erin at kellyjennypsychology@gmail.com. So thank you again for tuning in, and we will talk to you next week when I interview a guest on autism.